you know, for me, whenever I write, it usually is, I'm under, I like to be under unusual circumstances. 3 in the morning, no sleep, you know, maybe a really bad hangover at 7 a.m. Storms are great. Huge pounding rainstorms are good things. I usually like to write at 3, 4 in the morning, 5 in the morning by myself. You know, not that I have a phone that's on off very often, but the phone doesn't ring, cars aren't honking. You know, and for me the process is just try to let something occur that I'm not overthinking. I go back and overthink it and then edit, you know. But really try to get as much as possible as it first comes. If I get one verse, I try to write 10 verses, and I'll end up with 2 good ones. But you know, the process for me being, don't be yourself. Find out some other person, like this moment. But it's different writing, you know, sustained fiction. Right? That's not something, whenever I've had to write for magazine things and articles, nonfiction, that's a different process. That is, you know, I go from A to C to Z, and that's very concise. But, you know, writing things like songs they're not linear. You know, musically they don't have to be, lyrically they don't have to be. Listen to any Bob Dylan song, their lines will pick out and just go, great line, I have no idea what it means. And there's nothing wrong with
that. In addition to Dylan, of course, and Michael Stipe, of course, and Warren Zevon, who are some songwriters who have influenced you or who you admire in terms of just the lyric?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, you know, lately now that I'm older, all I've been really listening to is like blues from the 50s and old rockabilly, and who knows who wrote that, because it's passed down through the oral tradition. To me, you know, the more demented, the better, but not in the kind of like heavy metal, you know, Satan horns way. But you think about these guys, you know, African Americans or hillbillies, inventing this type of music, and they were all outcasts in their society, doing these crazy sounding records. Now I listen to them for inspiration, to think, what did it take to be that kind of person? To like for someone like Howlin' Wolf to make those records and say, I am this man. You know? And you aim for a little bit of that. If you're lucky, you'll get some.
And did you listen to, how did you come into music? What did you listen to when you were just discovering the music?
Oh, you know, everyone in my generation, I saw the Beatles on Insult when I was 6. But
somebody in our workshop wrote about it.
Yeah, you know, I could write a story about that one too. Most musicians my age have that story. But you know, music was really important to me, and I was lucky enough to live in the South where I got to see the tail end of the old blues guys. You know, local blues guys that maybe never made a record, and you know, like in 1970 or 71, you'd see a group of 65-year-old guys playing bluegrass, and realize, oh yeah, they were born 15 years before World War I. You know, so I got to see a lot of the past, a lot of traditions that disappeared really quickly. So that all was a big influence on all of us.
And any of those particular, did you get to see Howlin' Wolf? Or
no, I mean, he died when I was like 13, and I don't think there's plenty of places where 13-year-olds were welcome. But I got to see Buddy Waters, you know, Bo Diddley, Chuck Berry, a lot of the greats. And then a lot of people that are just fairly obscure. Furry Lewis was a one-legged garbage man from Memphis. Made some great records. That stuff came through, and you would have, you know, little art festivals maybe where, you know, at the time maybe I didn't appreciate ancient blues or, you know, what I would derisively at the time term hillbilly music, but it was something that was very real and part of these people's lives, and most of the people weren't professional musicians, which is kind of fascinating. I mean, Furry Lewis was a garbage man until he lost his leg, and then he was on retirement, and he played in his bedroom for gym. You know, it's just a different world that we won't really see anymore.
Are there, are you familiar with Mexican music, corridos, the story songs? Or anything?
Sure, you know, years and years ago, I bought a whole collection of, I can't remember what label put them out, but it was, you know, ballads from the 20s, and, you know, and it's always music I've heard. Having lived in Los Angeles for a little bit, you hear it a lot, you know. And it all comes from kind of the same place, you know. I mean, the accordion is a German instrument, and the two-step was brought here by German immigrants in southern Texas. and somehow that kind of crossed over to Mexico, became a completely Mexican thing. But the real old traditional Mexican music is not two-step accordion music. I spend a lot of time here. I hear a lot of it. I come to the local festival in October and hang out. And, in between the goth bands and the teen pop bands, there's always a great horn band. Last time there was a 9-piece horn section band that was just unbelievable. And the guys who played last night at Pescadero, they were just listen to them sing. It's like they were singing their lives in a way. Didn't really matter that the guitars weren't super in tune. It was great. They were really good.
Well, I'd like to open it up for some questions. Some of our workshop participants have some things to contribute or ask. Yes, please.
On the practical side, for non-musicians, folks, regular old folks who are not connected in the music industry, how do you go about getting songs sold or lyrics sold?
Oh boy, that is it's like making sausages. They have machines in Germany where people put like ideas in and cut. I would say that if you're thinking about writing songs, the best thing to do is be the best whoever you are, right from your perspective. Because there are really enough of these songs about teenage love and, apparently kids like that stuff. But there definitely have to be people that are listening to personal expression. That's what I look for when I'm listening for music, the energy, the excitement, the originality. But what are these guys saying? And one of the problems, what's that guy saying? I love that. He goes by my house all the time too, I like that. But, a lot of the times I listen to records and I'll realize, wow, great guitar player, good song structure. Nobody really wanted to write any lyrics. The lyrics are just kind of about nothing, Be specific, be yourself, be whatever is important in your life. Being individual, unique is the best way you can go about it. As far as selling songs, I don't think I can do that. I've had songs I've tried to reach out to these people, and I never get the phone calls back. Yeah, well, you know what? Do it on your own terms, and you'll be happy.
Great, thank you.
You may not get rich.
Jay.
I have another question. I'm curious what the impact of the whole digital world is in the music industry now.
I have like 2 or 3 different minds about that. The first is, I don't like the way digital recording sounds. My solo career, I record on analog, mix analog, only put out vinyl. No downloads, no CDs. That's like, saying I'm only going to ride a horse to work. But you know what? Damn it, I'm going to do it. I don't care. I can't say that I feel any sorrow whatsoever for the music industry disappearing, because basically the job of the music industry has been to take young people, African Americans, white kids from the South, and steal them blind, knowing that they'll be gone in 2 years. We'll find some more of those guys. So the faster the record companies disappear, the better. I would say that if there's a band you like, it's good to support them, whether you go see them or buy their CD or pay for a download. But at my level, I don't really care.
Do you read e-books or regular? Do you prefer?
I will always prefer a novel to, an iPad. But I travel 6 months of the year, and a lot of times I travel in places that don't have English bookstores. So yeah, I download lots of books, and I feel guilty about it. But on the other hand, we have a bookstore here, so I can buy books here. But I was in the Solomon Islands for 3 weeks. They don't have any bookstore. If I didn't have my iPad with my books on it, I would have just been reading about. So.
They have a venue to play in Solomon Islands?
No. Someday my novel will tell you my week-long story of the Solomon Islands, but it was pretty intense. But it's it's like it was like go back 100 years in time, and then getting robbed, and it was pretty interesting. So.
Now wait a second. Is there a novel coming out of you?
No, I outlined when the band broke up. I outlined a novel. I still think I have a novel in me. It's conceivable that I might do something of you know, a memoir, but it wouldn't be about me. How about a memoir where the guy who's writing it isn't the most important person?
So you mean,
Honestly, like, because most of the stories I tell you that are interesting would be about Warren Zevon or getting my passport stolen and getting Solomon Islands and having the local chief with all his guys with the machetes to go to the jungles and to get my passport back. You know, I mean, I'm at best a secondary character in all my own stuff.
so perhaps the third person might be a good way to approach.
Yeah, you know, I mean, there might come a time when I write about some of the things that have gone on around me, you know, famous people I've known or something like that. But, you know, in a lot of ways, I feel like I'm retired. This is like the third interview I've done in 4 years, and I'm not sure I have anything to say, and I personally am sick of seeing my face in magazines, and I can't imagine how everyone else must feel. So it's time, you know, for me to fade out in the darkness and just play music and do whatever.
All right. But if you do decide you need some stimulus for writing a workshop.
Yeah, you never know. You never know. I mean, I actually get a lot of work done down here because, as everyone knows, you know, as they told me when I bought the house, midnight occurs at 9 o'clock here in Todos Santos.
Baja Midnight.
And I stay up late, so I get a lot of writing done, you know, various types of music and whatever else I've got to do. And, you know, I sit in the backyard, look at the stars and write, and I find that pretty great in a way that I can't really get in Portland or Seattle when it's pouring rain and I'm indoors for a week at a time.
You know, R.E.M. historically has been part of what might loosely be called the indie music scene, as apart from the pop music scene or the stadium rockers and that sort of thing. Would you say that, and you brought down to your festival some rather writerly songwriters such as Joseph Arthur and Chuck Prophet. Would you say that that's, you know, your interest mainly? I mean, is this a phenomenon?
Basically, I invited my friends that I knew would work for free. You know, that would take time out of their life to come down and do this. And I certainly would like to expand it in the future. Bring in more local acts, bring in more native Mexican acts. But originally, it was just people that I know who I could call up and go, hey, do you mind not making a living for a week? And, you know, all these guys work for a living. You know, Steve Wynn he's in 3 bands, he produces records. Half the people here, Joseph Arthur flew out to do a show tonight in New York, I think. You know, everyone's busy. But I do tend to go for people who have unique things to say.
Exactly. So,
I'm not a musician, so forgive me if this sounds rather uninformed, but when it comes to a piece, the written part or the musical part, what would you say is the most important structural part? I mean, I know as an artist you want to get the composition. If you can get the composition, the rest it'll work. Is that the case in writing music or lyrics or?
I don't like to think so. I mean, you know, if you go see movies, I don't, but you can tell that all these people have taken the same writer's course about how you have to have 3 acts in every movie, and this guy has to be a bad guy, and you know, and I mean, I could sit and write one of those, and that's what they do. They teach you how to do exactly what everyone else does because it's popular right now. So for me, structure is something to, you know, a lot of times I go, well, why does this need to have the bridge? A bridge is the section that would tell you lyrically or musically what the song's about. Why does it need that? Why don't you just make noise? So I'm kind of trying to get rid of traditional structure as much as possible and still keep it sounding fairly structured. It's pretty loose the way I do it. I mean, it's really spontaneous.
Well, was it Picasso who said once you know the rules, then you can break them?
Yeah, you know, I think it's really great. I mean, I could play every Chuck Berry song ever written, and the world doesn't need me to imitate him. You know, he did it. He's great. He's all-time greatest. So, you know, I'll do something else. And ideally, who you are, what you know, what you've read, the places you've been, will put into, you'll be able to put into your art, whether it's music or painting or movies. You know.
So if a song has phenomenal lyrics, but the music is not so hot, or great music, but the lyrics suck, is one better than the other? Is just one?
You try to change the bad stuff, but you know, I just try to think of like lyrically, who's writing these? who is he? Is it me? Is it the guy that's kind of like me? You know, or is he the guy that's imitating someone else? You know, the guy who's imitating someone else, get rid of him. You know, writing music and lyrics, it's just like it's taken as a whole. You end up with this song, this thing. It's either good or bad or indifferent, and most people aren't going to hear it anyway. So I'm kind of just, my theory is do whatever feels right to me, and I don't really judge it on a quality level because it's just going to be what it is.
You said to the Wall Street Journal, sometimes at 3 in the morning a Ramones song is just right.
Yeah, you know, I was married for a long time and had kids, and it meant that it was kind of quiet around the house. And my kids were off at college, and I found myself doing stuff that I did when I went off to college, run Iggy and the Stooges at 2 in the morning, take a shot of tequila, or turn my amp up really loud and play. It's a great feeling. You know, I don't want to do it every night, and my neighbors don't want to hear it every night. But it occurs, and that's a kind of freedom that I haven't had in a long time.
Yes.
I have 2 questions. One is, which album are you most proud of producing and putting out, and why? And then also, a couple of kind of new bands or up-and-coming music, or who are you listening to these days that you're interested in?
Gosh. You know, the very first album we did, Murmur, I like that. It's like your high school picture. It's a pretty good high school picture. And I can't even remember the guy who did that record. I mean, that was 30 years ago. As far as new music, you know, I've been spending a lot of time listening to Mexican music, trying to figure out who might be good to come here. The bands we have this year, Galo Negro, Twin Tone were here last year, Torre Blanca, those are 3 great bands. I went to a festival in Guayacuro. Vanuatu, sorry. It sounds like Vanuatu, where it also was last year, in the mountains. It was a really great festival. I saw this band called Kinky, who I'd only kind of heard of. They were totally amazing. You know, if they were from Los Angeles, they would be the hugest band on earth. So I just try to keep my ear down, to the ground to that kind of stuff. Who knows? Maybe I can talk them into coming here one year.
Kinky would be great. Yes.
I'm a fan of Tired Pony, and I have it downloaded. How did that come to be?
Gary, who's the singer in Snow Patrol, they do records that take months, and I do records that take days. And I really tend to think that the longer you spend does not necessarily make it better, and I think for rock and roll it makes it worse. So he wanted to work with some people who could work really quickly. And, we spent 8 days on the first record, 9 on the second. We get along well. I like the music. We live in, I think, 4 different continents, 7 different cities, so it isn't really easy to get together, but ideally it will be an ongoing thing.
After 30 or 35 years of writing songs, do you find it easier or harder to write songs now?
Well, having just started writing lyrics, that's kind of interesting, because I haven't covered the whole gamut of lyrics, But yeah, musically, I'll play guitar and go, I've done that, my next door neighbor's done that, everyone's done that. It does get harder, in the sense that unless you are a Picasso who's just completely reinventing yourself every day, you tend to find that you get yourself stuck in a rut or do the same thing over and over. It's better just to quit for a while. I mean, I now, instead of beating my head against the wall, just put the guitar down for a few days, try to avoid it.
The methods you mentioned in your recording really fast, analog to 4-track, sounds a lot like pretty much identical to the way Frank Black records. Have you ever worked with him or have any desire to?
I know Frank, and I haven't worked with him. He's never called me. But I mean, when I describe the working methods, all the people in the music business just go, "My God, that's insane that you do that." And I go, "Well, every record you grew up on was made that way. I mean, the
And you can
first
make 3
record was made in
records
10
that
hours.
way.
And there's no reason you can't do this if you're focused and ready. And you think of all the records that you really despise, they took months.
Yeah.
Guarantee it.
Yes, sir.
How do you know when it's done?
Well, that to me, the second that you feel like you've lost whatever it was, you quit. And sometimes you go back, but I've always found that the worst thing in the studio is when everyone like me sits around going, well, I don't know, maybe the tambourine should be louder in the third verse. That might just go, let's just throw the song away and start over, to me, if you can't write it in 10 or 15 minutes, record it in an hour, then you just go on to the next thing.
Yes.
So I probably definitely sound like an old person when I ask this, but when I listen to music, I like listening to the whole album, and it drives me crazy that my kids pick one song and like that song, and then from another artist a different song. And so I'm curious, from the artist's perspective, when you do an album, is it the whole work, and should I keep telling my kids you need to hear the whole thing in its context?
I think people in my generation still think of an album still think of an album as having two sides. But my kids, they're like, they listen to thousands of songs. They know things that I don't know, but they don't sit and listen to albums all the way through. It's just, and most records that are made now aren't designed to be listened to all the way through. So I don't know. I tend to sit down, I play side A, and I turn it over and I play side B. But I think that's a dying.
So when you're writing now, you're not necessarily writing a whole album to flow.
Well, you write a lot of stuff, and then it seems to get to a point where you've got something finished, and that's just random. Yeah, that feels done. We don't need any more.
I guess that feeds into my question would be, living in Mexico, would you consider doing a Mexican version of Buena Vista Social Club?
There's so many great musicians down here, totally great, but they don't be better than me. I love, love seeing the local, like when I come to the local festival, I just kind of watch music for 8 hours a day. There's so much great stuff, and I have no idea what it is. I don't think I would have the skill or the abilities to put together some great band, but there are amazing people playing in every town.
Jenny.
Obviously, you're a reader, an avid reader, and that literary process is a very singular one. It's something you have to do on your own. How much of what you write is collaborative? Do you feel possessive about what you're writing, or is much of it a shared experience with other people?
I like working with other people because whatever little tricks that I've learned, that I tend to use them, they might not like those tricks. They have different tricks. So it'll push me in a position that I wouldn't normally possibly write if I was doing it by myself. When I work with the Tired Pony guys, we've got Irish folk musicians, and the drummer's a krautrock guy, and we've all got these different things coming in. And, it isn't something that I would have put together myself, and so I really like that.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, Jay.
I'm interested in the art of collaboration between a songwriter and somebody who's writing the lyrics. Because there's so many famous teams, and I wonder how you recognize a kindred spirit in that way.
I've written a lot of songs with other people, and you just try it. It doesn't always work. I have really good friends that I've never been able to write a song with, and I've written songs with strangers in 2 minutes. And I don't know how it happens or why. I know that in Nashville, people take it out to the paper and go, lyricist needs to meet a musician or whatever, but it just seems to me it's really weird on a personal level, and it doesn't. It's like a relationship. Two people you think would get along really well, maybe they don't. And it's the same with songwriting. It's not a science. I hope. I don't think so. I probably gotta hit the hotel. I've got a little job at the hotel tonight that I've got to do. So,
what can we look forward to tonight's lineup?
Well, tonight the Hotel California put together some local bands, and I'm gonna go introduce them and say hello to everyone. We've been trying to involve more local musicians as time goes on. It's not always super easy, and it's also hard to convince people who don't have a lot of money to play for free, And I think maybe it has sunk in to some degree on some local bands that this is free, it's not about your career, it's about making money for this cause. But we have some cool bands tonight. I'm gonna go down and introduce them the next few minutes. Definitely, it goes from 5 till not real late. I think 5 to 9, 5 till 10. I think there's 4 bands, so it's worth checking out. And it's also worth remembering that the only way you can have a local seat is support the local scene. Go see the local bands, buy their CDs, drop $1 in the tip jar.
And then we also have tomorrow night.
Yeah, and from then on, it's Driving and Crying, which is Kevin Kenny's band, Dream Syndicate, which is Steve Wynn's band, 3 Mexican groups. Galo Negro is, I've never seen them, but their record's unbelievable. They're a psychedelic cumbia band. And Twin Tones are like a punk surf group. And Torre Blanca is kind of poppy. I don't know how to describe them, but they're all really worth seeing, really kind of exciting. And, I'm sure some other people will pop up here and there.
And then Saturday night is the thrilling.
Is the Town Square. Yeah, and
Town Square.
that's mostly free. I mean, we try to get the people who can
Yeah.
afford to pay for it so that we can give the money to charities, but we want to have a thing where all the locals can come and hang out and be part of it and see that, culture isn't something that comes from far away. It's like some of these bands are from 90 miles from here, and, this is for the whole town, not just for, a certain segment of the town.
Well, it's great. I want to thank Peter Buck for coming today and for spending some time with us, and also for founding this music festival, which is for everyone to enjoy. So thanks again.
Well, I'm sure I'll see everyone over the next few days. I want to thank everybody whose work has done stuff for this.